Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you as by the attitude you bring to life. Not so much by what happens to you as by the way your mind looks at what happens. It's a quote from the great Khalil Gibran, and I'm Richard Santoro, and I welcome you to Third and Zen, the YouTube channel where every week we are sharing a spiritual message to nourish ourselves, heart, mind, body, and soul. First, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the video and the channel. I hope this video finds you doing well. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I hope you're finding whatever it is that you need for your well-being, for your heart, your mind, your body, your soul. If it's love you need, if it's care, if it's company, fellowship, healing, whatever it is, I hope that you're finding it in these days of summer. If you feel like liking the video, subscribing, sharing the video, that does help the channel. It does help get the word out, and I do appreciate that. So, with all of that being said, let's allow ourselves to prepare. Let's invite ourselves to get prepared. So take a nice deep breath. Take a moment. Allow yourself to be available, to be still, to be present, to be just in this moment. Allow yourself to be unburdened by the world around you, any problems that you feel that need to be solved, any chores, any this, any that. And now, I hope I'm not planting seeds of distraction, but just take a moment, take a breath. And let's get started with today's message, shall we? If I may, allow me to tell you 4 things about my morning commute to work. First, it seems like no matter how much sleep I get, every morning I am so tired. Next, I have to make such a long walk from my home all the way out to my car. Third, when I hit the road, it never seems to fail that I get stuck behind the slowest drivers during my whole journey, and my commute is so long. It seems to take forever. And last, fourth, all of this commute happens way too early in the morning. And that's 4 things about my daily morning commute. Now, if I may, let me tell you 4 things about my daily morning commute. First, when I start my day, even though I'm a little tired, I'm healthy, I'm capable, and I'm able to get up and go off to a job every day. Next, as I make my walk from my home to my car, I'm blessed that I have a home, I'm blessed that I have a car, and I'm blessed with fresh air, with trees, with the sight of clouds or blue skies or nature, whatever it is that day. Third, as I drive at a leisurely pace, I am given time to see the trees and the sky and the clouds and be at peace. And my morning time of commute gives me just enough time to start off my day with a healthy amount of prayer, of breathing, of contemplation, of reflection as I begin my day. And last, I am blessed to start my day off bright and early with a full gift of a day ahead of me. So, as you can see, there are 4 things about my morning commute. Now, of course, I'm sure you may have noticed that these lists are pretty similar in their narrative. And to be fair and completely honest, both of these lists are absolutely true. But what's the difference between the 2 lists? Well, each of those 2 lists are based upon my outlook, my perception, my view, the way I think about it. It's about how I choose to see and perceive and mentally process the events that are happening around me. They're all about how I choose to think about things. I can either choose to see things one way, or I can choose to see them another way. I can lean into one way, or I can lean into the other way. The choice is mine and mine alone. In life, it's the same. We can either choose to think about things one way, or we can choose to think about them another way. In short, the circumstances of life so often do not define our outlook, or for that matter, our happiness. Our outlook, our choices, our perception, our vision, our thinking, that is what truly defines our happiness and so often our overall well-being. We are the masters of our fate, so to speak, not necessarily the circumstances around us. Now, I know, and I want to say this right off the bat, that in life that there are circumstances around us and in our lives that happen that are hard to navigate, to juggle. There are traumas, there are illnesses, there are things that happen, and it doesn't mean that we have to put on a positive, happy face, a positive, happy thinking every moment of every day. I'm not trying to say that. That's not at all what I'm saying. And if you know me, and if you've watched this channel, you know it's not about some sort of toxic positivity. If anything, just the opposite. What I am trying to say, however, is that so much of who we are is defined by how we think. Yes, our actions define who we are, absolutely. But in large part, in addition to that, what we think every day, where we lean into with our thoughts, what we allow to occupy our headspace makes a massive difference in not only who we are, but also our levels of fulfillment, our levels of joy, or our levels of discomfort, pain, unhappiness. And it has an overall holistic effect on our heart, our mind, our body, and our soul. Where we lean into with our thoughts means everything. The greatest minds in human history, philosophers, thinkers, teachers, innovators, leaders, one string of truth that all of them seem to universally agree upon is that what we think, where we allow our minds to go, is primary and paramount in defining who we are and how much fulfillment or joy or lack thereof we find in life. Tolstoy said that happiness does not depend on outward things, but upon the way we see them. The great Khalil Gibran, who I quoted to start this video, wrote that we choose our joys and our sorrows long before we experience them. Milton wrote that the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of a hell and a hell of heaven. Emerson wrote that thoughts rule the world, and a person is what they think about all day long. James Allen stated that you are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. And the great Norman Vincent Peale states, very simply, change your thoughts and you change your world. And it is claimed that Lincoln perhaps stated that people are as happy as they make their minds up to be. And finally, the Buddha. The Buddha says that we are formed and molded by our thoughts. And what we think, we become. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. All that we are is a result of what we have thought. My friends, how we see things, how we perceive things, how we think about things, and what we lean into with our minds, it is everything. Now, along this string of thought, please forgive that pun, let's look at Jesus. Let's look to Jesus. Let's look to what Jesus has to say about all this. Jesus' teachings heavily focused on the inward citadel of our thoughts. Jesus constantly reminded people and all of us that our inward disposition is key. That being mindful of our thinking was equal to, and at times even more important, than our outward expressions. And that how we view things, how we think about things, defines everything. For example, Jesus didn't seek to change the Sabbath. He focused on how people saw the Sabbath and how they thought about it. Jesus didn't seek to change worship. He focused on how people saw it and how they thought about it. Jesus didn't seek to change Scripture or the Word of God. He focused on how people saw it and how they thought about it. Jesus focused on the way people saw things, on how they thought about things. Jesus focused on the inner makeup of our minds, of our perceptions, of our thinking, of our headspace. For Jesus, it wasn't enough to not take outward action against our enemy. We had to see them differently and think about them differently. For Jesus, outward expressions of devotion or worship of God were not the defining attributes of who we are, but rather he emphasized the inner way we see and think about God and approach God. For Jesus, the outward visible action of prayer was not even close to being paramount, but rather the inner, thoughtful disposition of our prayerful engaging and thinking about prayer and coming to prayer is what matters. Seeing things differently, thinking along different lines, pivoting of minds, that was the gospel of Jesus. You know, a friend of mine once noted in reference to a Bible series that had been running on the History Channel, they said that they couldn't help but think that the God of the Old Testament was so much different than the God of the New Testament. God in the Old Testament was violent and bitter and jealous, while God in the New Testament was love and kindness. It's a valid point of view, and it's one that is actually quite common. But did God actually change from Old to New Testament? Or did the way humanity sees God and thinks about God change? Jesus made us see God differently. Because of Jesus, the thinking towards God changed, not God changing in and of God's self. Again, I know I may be belaboring this point, but it's an important point to emphasize. How we see things, how we perceive things, how we think about things, and how we lean into thinking or lean away from thinking, it makes all the difference in our overall well-being. Lincoln and Tolstoy, Emerson and Milton, the Buddha and Jesus, the great minds of history knew this very well and tried very hard to express and emphasize and teach this. And all of this that I'm talking about today is so prevalent today in teaching and emphasizing our wellness in the mindfulness space, in the sciences and practices of psychology, and the studies of our biology and physical makeup and our mental makeup and our mental and physical and emotional health and well-being. It is a massive emphasis today for a reason. What we think, where we allow our headspace to lean into, how we allow ourselves to perceive things mentally and stay in certain things mentally is so important in our overall well-being. How we see our lives, how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see the circumstances around us, our perceptions, our thoughts, the way we think. It rules our lives and truly shapes our well-being. Okay, I think I've made this point pretty well. But just knowing all of this doesn't make it easier to manage, does it? Me just saying all of this doesn't really make it a whole lot easier, does it? Our thoughts will still run rampant or go to toxic or unhealthy or untrue places. Despite how vitally important it is, we will still fall into the trap of not seeing things in the healthy or proper light. We still fall victim to our thoughts. We still let erroneous thoughts and outlooks or pessimisms or toxic negativity rule the day. They take hold and control us in such unhealthy ways. Despite how important it is, we still let our thoughts and our thinking define our lives in ways that can be detrimental and unhealthy. How we see and think about ourselves, about others, about our relationships, circumstances, expectations, preconceived notions, stigmas, hang-ups, insecurities, unhealthiness, etc. We fall into pitfalls with how we see things and how we think about things. My friends, I know it isn't easy. So what do we do about it? What do we do to manage all of this? Well, let's give us some actionable tips. Some things that we can work on, that we can focus on, that we can care for in helping us with our headspace, with our thinking, with where we lean into, with our thoughts. Number one, first and foremost, being mindful and aware of it. Being mindful and aware that our thoughts are exactly that. They're just thoughts. If you are aware of the mindfulness space of Eastern teachings that are out there right now that people are caring for very much and sharing, there's a technique called labeling. It's used in meditation, it's used in everyday life, labeling. Labeling means when a thought pops into our head, we can just say, that's just a thought. That's just a thought. It separates us from the thought where we can view it like viewing a TV rather than being in it, consumed by it. And it's okay whatever thought it is. If it's anger, if it's jealousy, if it's insecurity, if it's anything, there is no judgment. We can be non-judgmental observers. And when a thought pops into our head, we can say, that's just a thought. And we allow it to be there. And we say, I'm going to hold space for it. You're welcome here too. And you hold space for it with love, but you don't allow it to take root, take hold, and shape everything. I don't feel well. Okay, that's just a thought. You're welcome here too. Bottom line, we can label. We can do that. Number two, and maybe I should have made this number one, it takes work. It takes effort to care for our thinking and our headspace and what we lean into. As Oswald Chambers once said, God will not make me think like Jesus. I have to do it myself. Again, it takes effort. It takes work on our part. In essence, I can't tell anybody how to see things, how to think about things in the course of our daily lives. I can't dictate to anybody how we should think or what thoughts we should or shouldn't have. It's not about that. Our outlook, our point of view, how we see things, how we think about things, how we think about people and circumstances, it's all up to us. So again, number one, I can only remind us of the vital importance. I can only convey how we see things and how we think about things is the essence of who we are. So, we remind ourselves that what we think is vitally important in our overall well-being, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Number two, maybe we practice the act of labeling. That's just a thought. That's just a thought. You're welcome here too. Thought pops into our heads, we use this labeling, say it's only a thought, and we hold space with love. That's just a thought. And last, I want to leave us with this. The Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is a wonderful and beautiful and thoughtful gospel. Now, each of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, have their own symbol. Now, you can often see these symbols in art, on stained glass, in churches of all types, and so on. The symbol of the Gospel of John. The symbol of the Gospel of John is the eagle. The eagle. Now, there are several reasons for this, but one reason is that John's Gospel is so beautiful and so wonderful, it's so intricate and so thoughtful that it has caused us to note that John's thoughts soared higher than most thoughts. John's thoughts soared higher than most thoughts. How we see things, how we think about things, where our thoughts go. It is so important. And our thoughts, when unhealthy, when off base or toxic or false or misplaced, can be labeled by us as just that, a thought. And we can care for that thought and hold space for it with love and then let it move on. And our thoughts can then soar as high and as lovely as we want them to. Yes, the circumstances in life around us can be difficult. I know that. We all know that, and we experience that. But where we allow our mind to go, what choices and decisions we make with our thinking, with our headspace, it is everything. The choice is ours to do our best, to make an effort, to be mindful of our thoughts. It's all up to us. And I'll leave you with this. Remember, as the poet Longfellow noted, my own thoughts are my companion. So let's choose our companion mindfully and be mindful of our thoughts and which way we lean into when given the choices. Thanks be to God. Amen. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you for stopping by the channel. I want to thank you for checking out today's video. I hope you found it fruitful. Again, I hope you're doing well. I wish you peace and love and all the best well-being, heart, mind, body, and soul. Go in peace. Go with the love of God. I love you all. I thank you. Have a great day. Ciao.